Great. Well, we are going to clear up some confusion today on NAD with Dr. Nichola Conlon. And NAD is a molecule that we have in our bodies that can regulate aging. So we're all kind of interested in that. We've heard about it, and a lot of people aren't even sure what it is, but we lose it as we age. And that's one of the reasons we get tired. So Nichola is going to share some of the latest research on menopause and biological age, and how managing our NAD levels at the appropriate time may actually help us not only feel better, but help slow down aging. I'm so excited for that. But you probably heard of Dr. Conlon before. She's been on the wellness and biohacking podcast circuit for a while now. And we had a great interview last year, which I highly recommend you go back to and listen. You'll get a really deep dive into NAD. And I used to be one of those people who took NMN and NR to try to boost my NAD levels until Dr. Conlon taught me a more efficient way to boost my NAD. And we'll talk a little bit about that today too. So Dr. Conlon is an amazing molecular biologist who aging is a biologically complex disorder. So she has got her PhD in physiology from Newcastle University, home to the largest institute for aging research in Europe. And she is also trained as a cosmetic scientist. And we still need to schedule that podcast on the cosmetic industry. I'm so curious to hear your point of view. And Nichola has tons of experience in molecular biology, particularly when she was working for a huge biotech company looking at early stage drug discovery. And she then used this experience to create her own company called Nuchido to bring a supercharged scientific discoveries and products and education to the public. And what's amazing about what she does is that she looks not only to help people with give them better products and services, but she wants this to come out as fast as possible and to be completely transparent. And she really wants to empower us and become health advocates of ourselves, health literate, and to make the best decisions for our own selves, our own bodies. So without further ado, meet Dr. Conlon. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for a lovely introduction, Zora.
Yeah, you're amazing. We all love you. I want to first talk about NAD for those people who don't know what it is. So if you can explain what it is, why it's important, and why do we all talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So NAD, well, first of all, it stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. You don't need to remember that, but everybody always asks that question. So that's what it stands for. But it is an abbreviation. We tend to call it NAD or NAD. And basically, NAD is an incredibly important molecule. It's found in every single cell in your body. And basically, if you didn't have it in your cells, it's so important that you would literally die in 30 seconds. And that's because of some of the critical roles that it performs. So two main ones are, first is cellular energy production. So it's incredibly important in the cycle which converts the food that you eat into the energy that your body and your cells need to have to perform all of their functions. And the second thing that it's really important for is cellular maintenance and repair. So as a general rule of thumb, if you have high levels of NAD, what that means is all of your cellular maintenance and repair is turned up. And if you have lower levels of NAD, all of your cellular maintenance and repair pathways kind of get turned down. And the really interesting thing about NAD is, and the reason that it's linked to aging, is that it's actually been found to decline as we get older. And this is a pretty negative thing, because if you think about how important it is in the body, it's something that you don't really want to be declining in your cells as you get older. But it's estimated that NAD levels decline by about 50% every 20 years from birth. So that's quite a shocking amount considering how important it is. And just linking that to what NAD does, what that means is if your NAD levels are declining in your cells as you get older, then it means energy production's going down. And it also means that cellular maintenance and repair is going down and effectively getting switched off. And all of these things mean that you get basically a reduction in cellular repair and energy, that basically causes an accumulation of damage in the cells. And it's this damage that manifests itself as the signs and symptoms that we associate with aging.
Hmm. But you said from birth, every 20 years, we lose 50%. So by the time you're
Yeah.
20 years old, you've lost 50% of your NAD.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
God,
then that
that's
halves
huge.
again, and then it halves again. So you can imagine that, by the time that you are getting into your latter years, you really don't have very much NAD left in your cells at all. It's a fraction of what you had when you were younger.
Mm.
So, when you see kids running around the playground and you say, oh my goodness, where do they get all their energy from? That's
Mm.
because they've got high NAD levels and we don't.
Yeah, exactly. We got to suck that out of them. So in fact, because I was thinking Nuchido as a product, or supplement to help us would be something you'd take in, after the age of 40 or 50. But in fact, it could be very useful for somebody who's younger. But we all, aside from supplements, we also talked about how we can improve our NAD levels with exercise, right? And there was a few other ones as well. Now, a
Yeah,
few.
absolutely. Because boosting your NAD levels has been found to be a really good thing to do. So scientists obviously said, you've got this really important NAD molecule. It's declining with age. That's making bad things happen in our bodies. What happens if we don't let it decline? So they tested multiple different ways at which you could actually boost NAD levels. And they found that if you restored NAD levels to youthful levels, then basically you got a whole host of benefits, everything from improved energy production in the mitochondria through to better cellular repair, right the way through to effects on multiple age-related diseases like Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease. So the benefits of restoring NAD are huge. And as you mentioned, there are multiple ways you can do that. Some of the the really well-known ways are things that almost seem a little boring because I've heard them all before, but things like exercise is incredibly important for boosting NAD levels. Fasting is also really important, and the way at which those work basically to boost NAD is that they create an energy stress in the cell. So when they create that energy stress, what it does is it signals the body to say, oh my goodness, the cell doesn't have much energy coming in. Therefore, we need to activate pathways that are going to maintain and repair and keep good care of what we've got. And it boosts NAD higher. All the cellular maintenance and repair and energy production gets turned up. And then you get the benefits that we associate with exercise and fasting through this increased NAD.
That's amazing, because when you would think, if you don't feed yourself, then that cell, or you need in, raw materials to create energy, right? So, but what's happening sounds like it goes wrong when we lose our NAD, then our mitochondria and our cells are just not being as efficient to be able to create that energy, even though you're putting in energy by food. It's not converting it to energy. So it's a stressor to fast a little bit. And when you say fasting, it's such a broad term. So it could be anything, just sleeping to having a 10-day fast or something like that. So it's very, very broad term. So we'd have to define that later. Because I don't know how much you'd have to fast. And I'm guessing it's probably very bio-individual on how to fast for each person, because, if the study's done on sedentary men over 50, well, if you're an active 35-year-old woman, like, okay, we can't go by that study, right? So we need to focus on that. So that's very interesting, that fasting. Would caloric restriction be in that category too, do you think, that would create NAD?
Yeah, so caloric restriction absolutely does increase NAD. And again, it's been found as one of the mechanisms of why that procedure has so many benefits, is because it is elevating NAD levels.
Interesting. So yeah, it's kind of like waking up the cell with a little bit of stress. And so everybody's
Yeah.
got to figure out how much that is. So that's really, really great. So we know that NAD is an important molecule. Our body can produce its own. We don't need to actually eat NAD or take NAD as a supplement, because I don't even think that even exists. That's why people take these precursors, NMN, NR. And exercise and fasting. I mean, this is, but you know, who wants to exercise and who wants to fast? I know there's probably people listening to this like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Just give me the supplement. But I really like to encourage people, even if you do take some kind of supplement, like you need to do some little bit of, you know, of everything else too. I don't like to take
Absolutely.
the
I agree.
shortcut, because I think the benefits of a supplement, you know, they sound like miracles, and they are when you do have some of these foundations in place, but you can't expect it to be a miracle, you know, by doing nothing. And what we had was very interesting from our first conversation about NAD and Nuchido, which you've produced to help, you know, fix our own NAD production, is there was a gentleman who was, I think he was in his 70s maybe, and he started to take some Nuchido, and he said, you know, he was just very fatigued. He knows that exercise will help him, you know, improve his NAD, but when you're so tired, it's really, really hard. So it was really nice to see how he was using a supplement to as a crutch to like just get him a little started. And then it's okay, he got a little bit more energy with that. And then he said he was exercising more. And then it's just like this wonderful, beautiful cycle that just happens, you know, all together. So I love it when people take supplements like that. So that was wonderful to hear. But I would love to ask you, because, you know, what do you think is actually causing us to age in the first
Mm.
place?
Yeah, that's it. That's a good question, because, you know, a lot of the things that we're doing and, you know, people are trying to achieve is, you know, aging well. But like what actually is aging in the first place? Like what's actually happening inside us to cause this thing that we call aging? And I always get people to think about aging through the lens of evolution, or from how we've evolved, because that's ultimately what is causing us to age. So really, you know, as a species, our life purpose is basically to be like a shell for our DNA, so we can pass our DNA on to our offspring in one piece. And it's to protect that DNA cargo till we reproduce and you know, have our kids, and then we've basically done our purpose as far as evolution is concerned. Which basically means that our bodies have evolved to become really, really good at repairing themselves, because throughout our lives, our bodies are constantly inflicted with damage. So just by breathing, we're damaging our bodies. Our respiration is giving off free radicals, which is damaging us. That doesn't even account for our diet. That's probably not the best it could be. Or, you know, things like exercise, which is damaging us, pollution, which is damaging us. Everything around us is trying to damage us. So our bodies have evolved to be really, really clever at fixing damage. And just to put this into perspective, it's estimated that just every single day in your cells, you get around 10,000 pieces of DNA damage. And our cells are just repairing that without us even knowing it's a problem. They repair it before it's an issue, which is pretty incredible to think, you know, that's going on inside of you right now. But the problem with these processes is they cost the cell a lot of energy. They're really energy intensive processes. So when you're young, the cells kind of say, well, it's worth investing all of this effort because we need to protect the body and get it to reproduction age and, you know, fulfill the purpose. However, after we've passed childbearing age, the body's kind of like, okay, the body should have fulfilled its purpose. Why would we keep all these expensive repair mechanisms switched on? And it gradually starts to turn them off. This means you get damage in the body, this accumulates, and this is why we get aging. So this is exactly where, you know, this decline in NAD falls in, things that are getting turned off as we get older. And this is a problem for us modern humans because we're now living a lot longer. So only 200 years ago, you know, back in the 1800s, we were lucky to see our 50th birthday, maybe even our 40th birthday. You know, we probably died quite young due to infectious disease during childbirth, you know, a tooth abscess, something like that. But we're now living much longer. So a child born today is going to live well into their 80s. And this means that now we are living a lot longer when our repair is being switched off, as opposed to 200 years ago, which is a relatively short time frame in terms of evolution, where we never really lived long enough to experience this phase of our life after repair was getting switched off after childbearing age. So we're kind of in new territory. And this thing that we call aging is quite a new thing. in terms of evolution, and our bodies just haven't had time to catch up. So our bodies are basically designed to be really good at being young, but not good at being old. And if you think about it from evolution's glasses, it makes perfect sense, because why would evolution select for anything that made us good at being old when we were never likely to make old age? So this is essentially why we experience this issue of aging.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Well, I hope we're in new territory, but I hope we can figure this out quickly before I die.
That's what we're working on.
Exactly. And that's why, your studies with NAD is just so incredibly interesting and helpful. So let's talk a little bit before we go into menopause, because we're going to talk a little bit about biological age versus chronological age. So let's clear up some of that confusion for some people. What's the difference?
Well, biological age is becoming a really interesting thing for scientists like myself to look at, because what we now know about aging is it tells us that things are going wrong at a cellular level inside of us. So although a lot of people talk about aging in terms of the external visual appearance or the physical characteristics, actually the root causes of aging are deep within ourselves. And this has led scientists to become really interested in this concept of biological aging. So biological aging is basically a measure of how well your cells are actually aging inside. And this is different to what we would normally measure in aging, which is your chronological age, which is just how old you are. It's the number of candles on a birthday cake. But the really important thing is how old your cells are inside, because the interesting thing is it's been found that there's a lot of discrepancy between people's chronological age and their biological age. So what I mean by that is somebody could be 50, however, they could have the biological age inside of a 60-year-old. And what that would show us is that actually they're not aging very well. They've got more damage in their cells than they should have for a typical person that age. As opposed to the flip side, which would be that, a 60-year-old may have a biological age of a 50-year-old, in which case that shows us that they're actually aging better. And that the processes in their cells are actually keeping turned on for longer and actually trying to, keep the cells in good health for longer. So what it means is that we can, the discrepancy between your chronological age and your biological age is a really good measure of how well a person is aging. And also it shows us as scientists that there's this opportunity to actually do something about it at the cellular level. Because the key thing about biological age is that it is reversible, and it's now been demonstrated that you can improve your biological age. So you can't take candles off the birthday cake, but you can actually improve your biological age.
It's super important. I think we all need to measure that somehow at some point in our lives. And I think that doctors should really take that into consideration. And as a gerontologist, we study health rationing. And, I really questioned about that because, I think in the UK, you don't give kidney dialysis after the age of 55, just based on age, health rationing. So you don't get certain medical, because they just, what's the point? You're going to die anyways. I mean, it's kind of shocking. So I'm wondering, if I get to 55, and get kidney dialysis, then I'd have to tell them, go look at my biological age or something, because, maybe certain decisions and social policy can be made according to your chronological age, which, I mean, could be beneficial for you. It could be really horrible for you too. Yeah. But these are questions that will, these are social policy questions later on in terms of, as we age, as we live longer, as we live better or worse, these have to be taken into consideration. And we have these tools to measure it. How will they be used will be very interesting. But so let's talk about menopause. And so how does that affect our biological age? And is it perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So menopause is really interesting when it comes to biological age, because the unfortunate news is that menopause and going through menopause is not good for your biological age. There've been some really quite scary studies, but also fascinating studies recently where there's particular ways you can measure your biological age, and scientists have basically measured biological age of women that have been going through perimenopause into menopause, and they've found that basically they can age by 9 biological years in just 6 months of menopause. So this is how much of an extreme impact the hormonal changes are actually having on a woman's biological age. And I think some people and some women that, have gone through the menopause will probably say, yeah, I can feel like I've aged that much in 6 months. And another huge study of 2,000 women demonstrated that a woman's rate of biological aging can double going through the menopause transition. And even in some women, it can increase by up to 20 years.
Wow, that is crazy. In 6 months, or is this just kind of over?
That's over the whole period of menopause. So obviously menopause can, last, for some women it can be short, but for others it can, go on for 8-10 years. But over that whole transition, they can experience a rate of aging that is way beyond anything that would be happening in the other proportions of their lives.
Yeah, that's like if the average age of menopause is 51, then by the time you're 52, you'll be somewhere like a 60 or a 70-year-old.
This is exactly what was found in the studies. And they are scary figures, but in a way it's really good that this has been measured, because what it's meant is that there's now a lot more research that's being put into actually, what is causing this, and is there anything more importantly that we can do to reverse it and help women that are going through this transition period.
Exactly. So what about NAD levels as we go through menopause? Does that take a deep, steep dive down as well, more accelerated, more than just the average 50% every 20 years? Do you know?
There's actually been no studies that have directly measured, the rate of decline of NAD during menopause. From a theoretical perspective, we would expect that it does decrease further because of some of the other things that are going on in the body during that time, which we know actually use up more NAD and can cause more NAD decline. But we don't have any data that actually shows exactly what is happening. We do know is, obviously estrogen is plummeting during this phase. And then this is why women get many of the symptoms of menopause. And although many people just associate estrogen with as a sex hormone, it's absolutely not that. It is a hormone that regulates so many different things in the body. There are estrogen receptors everywhere, everywhere from our brain for synaptic plasticity, through to our muscles for maintaining muscle mass, our mitochondria for energy production, our immune system. Like estrogen is so important for regulating a lot of different things in a woman's body, and also a man. So men have estrogen too, and they have estrogen receptors, but obviously women are used to high levels. So when these levels really plummet, that's a huge problem. And there's sort of two theories of why estrogen is causing so many issues in the body. And I think, we're only touching the surface really with what we know about this, which I think is absolutely terrible, considering 50% of the world's population experience this. But, why is it that this decline in estrogen is having such a huge impact on biological age? And the first thing is that estrogen is incredibly important for your normal immune function and appropriate immune function. And what seems to happen is as estrogen actually declines during menopause, this causes chronic low level inflammation in women. And we know that's a bad thing. And this is something that's, linked to the hallmarks of aging and actually causes cellular aging when you have this chronic low level inflammation, which we tend to refer to as inflammaging. And, this comes with a lot of other negative effects and damages a lot of other things and sets off a lot of other reactions in the body that are pro-aging. So menopause, low estrogen, chronic low level inflammation can cause a lot of this damage and symptoms. The other thing where it's thought to play a big role is in mitochondrial function. Now, as you mentioned before, mitochondrial function is absolutely critical to healthy aging. And it's, one of the major hallmarks of aging is mitochondrial dysfunction, when our mitochondria just don't function as well as they used to. And what that means is you get buildup of, lack of energy production, and also a buildup of damage in reactive oxygen species, which cause all sorts of other issues in the body. And it's been found that within the mitochondria, there are a lot of estrogen receptors. And actually, estrogen makes sure that women's mitochondria are functioning optimally. So when you get the decline in estrogen, mitochondrial function goes down, you get reactive oxygen, you get damage, that's damaging your DNA, it's causing things like cellular senescence and all these, it's like the perfect storm that's happening. So it's not surprising that women experience such a range of symptoms going through the menopause, because estrogen is just not available to interact with all these important receptors that it should be interacting with.
Yeah, I think to clarify, just in case some people don't know, mitochondria is the little powerhouse in each of our cells, and that's what creates ATP. So if you remember in biology, that's your energy storage, right? So currency. So that's what, when we talk about mitochondria and mitochondrial function, mitochondria do a lot of things, but the main thing that we're talking about is energy. And so this is really interesting, because yes, if the low estrogen is causing the mitochondrial dysfunction, then that makes sense. That why are we so tired when we hit menopause? And I was wondering, then where does the NAD come into this? Because there's estrogen and there's the mitochondria, but NAD levels, we know that's declining, but I'm wondering if in the studies on menopause and women and NAD, is there a role that NAD is playing in particular with menopausal women too here?
Yeah, well, again, it is almost like the perfect storm, because right at a time when a woman's estrogen's declining, also their NAD is really dramatically a lot lower than what they had when they were younger. So you've got these two really important things that are regulating how well your mitochondria are going to produce your energy, that are both declining at the same time. So actually improving your NAD levels is being demonstrated to improve your mitochondrial function. So actually help to reverse some of this decline and actually improve energy production in the cells. And there's a huge amount of research now to demonstrate that, one of the major ways NAD works is by reversing mitochondrial dysfunction. So you can actually use NAD and boost your NAD levels to almost counteract some of the negative effects of estrogen decline using NAD.
So would hormone replacement therapy with some estrogen, would that help improve energy?
Yes, definitely. So estrogen, hormone replacement therapy, you're obviously putting estrogen back into the body, and then estrogen is then available to actually interact with all the receptors that are almost waiting for it. Hormone replacement therapy has been shown to reverse biological aging as well, and it's thought that this is the reason why, because you're replacing that lost molecule to enable it to keep activating all of the different pathways that it's involved in. And I suppose while we're on the subject of energy, we talk about energy in terms of, we often think like physical energy and, how energetic we are in terms of moving around. But there's also energy in terms of your cognitive energy, which is something which a lot of menopausal women really have huge problems with, which is brain fog. And, the sort of science behind why this happens is basically because estrogen receptors are really, really abundant in the mitochondria in the parts of your brain that are involved with memory and cognitive function. So like your hippocampus, your frontal lobe. And if you don't have the estrogen there, basically the mitochondria, which are making the energy for your brain to work, aren't working. So they're not producing the energy in the brain. And this presents as, unable to form new connections in the brain, unable to store memories, having that can't remember things, that brain fog. And it's been shown that, your metabolic function in your brain, and a woman's brain after menopause, decreases by about 15 to 25%. So, and this is thought because it's basically this mitochondrial dysfunction. And actually, you can counteract that using things like NAD to boost the mitochondrial function back up again.
This is amazing. So this is great. If you are taking hormone replacement therapy, fine. But if you're not, then a bit of exercise, fasting, or taking a supplement would be your next option. Or if you're a man and you don't want to take estrogen replacement, then these are some of the other things you can do to increase your NAD so that everything can function, not only feeling energetic, but your brain and every single function in the body needs energy, right? All your cells need energy to work, right? We never look at that.
Yeah. And it's absolutely critical. And as well as the energy side of it, there's also the repair side of NAD. So that's the other really important thing for NAD. So, again, if you think about the effects of estrogen decline, what they're doing is that they're causing a lot of damage in the body through the inflammation and through the reactive oxygen species. And NAD is known to repair damage at the end of the day. So it's very well publicized now that NAD can actually reduce chronic low-level inflammation. So, getting rid of that chronic low-level inflammation that's pushing biological age up. And also on the other side, it can activate things called the sirtuins, which are longevity genes. And these are known to basically switch on a lot of our antioxidant defenses to actually protect us from some of the damage that this lack of estrogen is causing. So, boosting your NAD levels, throughout this period is certainly a beneficial thing to do to try and combat some of the negative effects of lower estrogen.
Oh my gosh, such great information. So then let's talk a little bit about when should we be concerned about our low NAD levels? Is there a certain age or certain feeling, something that we go through?
Yeah, I mean, as we discussed earlier, it literally does decline from birth, which is slightly depressing. But I think really, when people generally start to notice the effects of lower NAD would be more in their sort of 30s, which is, no coincidence that that's often when we start noticing some of the signs of aging, usually the more superficial ones, like the odd gray hair or, the odd signs of wrinkles or your skin not performing like it used to. And that's because, when your NAD starts to decline, things like that are the lowest priority in your body. So they're not going to get repaired, repair's going to go elsewhere. So it's when people start to experience any of those things that there is a sign that their body's actually struggling to keep on top of this damage, which it normally just repairs without us knowing anything about it. So we would often say around that age. However, NAD declines at different rates in different people. It has your lifestyle has a huge impact on NAD. So if you're somebody that is, exercising regularly, having an amazing diet, amazing sleep habits, you've probably got higher NAD than the average person your age because you're doing good things to optimize it naturally. On the flip side, if you are smoking, sunbathing, going on tanning beds, not sleeping, having a bad diet, then you are likely to have lower NAD levels because we know that NAD becomes depleted by these things. Excessive alcohol intake that depletes NAD. So yeah, it is a lifestyle thing. Also, various diseases are associated with lower levels of NAD. It tends to be that anybody who has sort of metabolic diseases, so like your diabetes, your fatty liver disease, things like that, they are associated with chronically low NAD levels as well. So yeah, it's not only the age that affects it, it's also some of these other factors too.
Interesting. So then would somebody who is interested in boosting their NAD levels through a supplement, would they cycle it in and or would they take it all the time for the rest of their lives?
I think the thing with NAD, the way you've got to think about it is it's like an investment in your cellular health. It's something that's a given, like it's going to decline. So it declines in every species that it's been tested in. Everything from microorganisms all the way up to humans, it declines with age. And there's no exception to this. So it's always something that's going to So therefore, if you don't do anything about it, it's going to decline. So what we try to get people to think about is, instead of, it's something where it's a quick win and you're seeing this immediate effect, this is actually a proactive approach to aging well. It's something that you can be continuously doing and keeping on top of before actually you start to see and experience the signs of damage. So I think, it is a long-term investment.
Well, like take this man who had such a great testimony the last podcast, and he started supplementing, and it gave him enough energy to go to the gym. And so then the more he exercised and the more energy he had. And so I'm just wondering if somebody like him, or even somebody like me, I exercise a lot, got good NAD levels, I imagine, because I feel pretty good. But there's also damage being done, as I've trained, and I exercise a lot. So maybe I do need the NAD for repair. So it's really hard. We talked about this too, like how do we measure our NAD levels, or how do we really know? Because I would tend to cycle it in, when I'm feeling like maybe I've overtrained, or maybe I'm a little bit more tired, and then I would, take the supplement just to boost it. And then, but maybe that's the wrong approach. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is a bit of both, and it's personal choice. The way my brain works as a scientist is, theoretically what's going on in the body, and the evidence demonstrates that it declines.
Yeah.
So, even as we're trying to keep on top of it as we're getting older, ultimately older cells have more damage, they have more inflammation, they need more NAD, and the cell's ability to make NAD also declines with age. So when you put these two factors together, it's, the rate of NAD decline almost speeds up as you get older. So the older you are, the more important it becomes to prioritize boosting NAD levels. But yeah, in younger people, it could be that, if they're having a particularly stressful life period, if they're particularly training hard, anything that's going to deplete NAD, they could be like, right, we're going to actually do something to address this is a short-term thing.
Mm-hmm. So we did, there is no, as I understand, so if I remember, unless something's changed since we last talked, there is no like test or kit that's easy to test our NAD, or go to the doctor with a blood test, because I think you said it was very short period of time to get to
So
find
there
it, right?
are kits popping up. I would love it if there was a commercially available kit to measure NAD, but unfortunately the science just isn't there yet, and any of the ones that are available, I haven't seen enough evidence to demonstrate that they're reliable enough. And this is because NAD is a really unstable molecule. By its very nature, it's designed to be unstable in the body. It's designed to flip between different forms, which means that when you draw blood from a person to measure it, it very, very quickly breaks down. And we've done, in our own labs, experiments that show that, just taking some blood out and leaving it at room temperature for 20 minutes, there's basically no NAD left, which means you've got to very, very quickly get that blood processed. So if you don't have immediate access to a lab that can do that immediately and then cryogenically freeze it, it's likely that whatever you're measuring isn't real. So that sort of restricts the measurements to academic labs who can do those sorts of testing, where they can have the person come on site for a blood draw and then immediately process it. But, hopefully in the future, there may be some surrogate markers. It may be that a panel gets discovered where it's something else, also rises as your NAD rises, and that's easier to measure. But we're just not there yet.
Yeah, I hope it comes out soon. So that's because I always like to measure and assess before I take any kind of supplements, or if I'm doing some protocol, exercising or the fasting, for example, to boost NAD. But tell us
biological age. That's a good thing to measure. That there's kits available to do that now. And NAD should reverse multiple factors of biological age. And we've just finished a big clinical study, and we actually measured biological age in this study. The results are very, very close now to coming out. They should have been out 2 years ago, but obviously due to the state of the world in the last 2 years, they were delayed. But we have measured biological age. So I would say biological age is probably a good thing to measure.
Is there anything you can reveal from these tests so
I
far, or
can't,
you have to wait?
I can't, because it's a double-blinded test, double-blinded placebo controlled. So we don't know which was the placebo, which was the real thing, and neither do the people that were taking it. So once it's all fully analyzed, then it'll be unblinded. But that is something that we measured, because we would expect that it would have an impact on biological age.
Okay, we'll have to keep us posted on that.
We'll have to do another podcast on results.
Yeah. So I want to hear a bit the impacts on NA and say Nuchido for, on women in menopause. But before we do that, I think we need to explain very shortly, briefly, why Nuchido would be a better option, or as well, or even exercise and fasting, as opposed to taking NMN and NR to improve your NAD levels.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because a lot of people take precursor supplements, is what we call them, such as NR or NMN. And what these are basically the raw materials that the body needs to produce NAD. Now, the issue with taking these is that they don't actually address the underlying reasons of why your NAD is actually declining in the first place. And, this is because for a long while, it wasn't known why NAD was declining. But now the science has basically demonstrated very strongly that the reason NAD declines, well, there's two reasons. The first is that your cells need more NAD, so they use up more NAD, in fact, quite wastefully. So things like inflammation and excessive DNA repair basically chew away at NAD like there's no tomorrow. The other thing is that our cells actually become less capable of making and recycling NAD as we get older. So again, perfect storm situation. As we get older, the demand for NAD increases, but at the same time, our cells simply can't make and recycle NAD like they did when they were younger. So the issue with precursors is that they simply do not address these problems. It's kind of, I probably said this on the last podcast, but it's like thinking about a factory. If you had an NAD factory, which is essentially what our cells are, and their production in the factory had gone down, and you knew it was because the machines weren't working and the pipes were leaking, do you think it would be a good idea simply to just order more raw material and hope that this failing factory turned it into NAD? Yeah. Probably not. And what you'd really want to do is fix the factory. So, and this is how Nuchido works. We've developed a formulation that not only has a precursor in, so it has a raw material in, but also it has multiple different active ingredients in there that actually address the root causes of NAD decline. So it has ingredients in there that actually inhibit all of the things that are using up lots of NAD and wasting it. And also it has active ingredients in that boost the cellular enzymes and pathways that we know decline with age, that actually make and recycle NAD. So it's effectively fixing the factory as well as ordering the raw material. And we find when we take this multi-targeted approach and actually address the root causes, that we get a much larger increase in NAD levels than a precursor alone. So our pilot study demonstrated that, using this approach, just within 16 days of supplementation, you could boost NAD levels by around 242%, which is around 4 times better than the published values for NMN and NR, which tend to be around 40 to 60%.
Crazy. And yeah, this is why I take Nuchido. This is why I get such good feedback. And that's amazing, because that's quite immediate. So yeah, I'm glad you cleared up that confusion. And I always give the analogy of the factory. It just makes perfect sense to me. So I know you don't have any studies on Nuchido, but you and women on menopause. But I'm wondering if you have any anecdotal information, that, feedback from the customers who are in menopause, and anything that they're feeling or seeing. Yeah.
So we've actually had a huge amount of anecdotal evidence in the form of emails from women of a certain age going through the menopause that have basically said how much it's really impacted on their symptoms and actually improved the symptoms. And the main ways that it's actually helped them, are twofold. It's the actual physical energy. So, actually just not feeling so like I can't do anything. I feel knackered all the time. It's really actually having more of it. Actually, I feel ready to get on with the day type of energy. Much more, just that getting rid of that sort of chronic fatigue that seems to come over women during menopause. The other side of it is the mental energy, and it's a reduction in brain fog. Women coming back and saying how much it's, helped in all aspects of their life, because they now just feel like they can just function again. They feel like, from simple things like just remembering people's names, or not forgetting the words mid-sentence, or, right the way through to other women that have got in touch with us and said it's made such an impact that it's, dramatically improved their business, because, they've gone from being like a high flying businesswoman to then going through the menopause and almost, feeling like they couldn't function anymore, to then actually saying, do you know what, I've got myself back and I'm able to function again. So for us, this has been super exciting, because again, from the theoretical perspective, we understand that how NAD can be helping them, and clearly it is helping them. But as a scientist, I want the data. Anecdotal evidence isn't good enough for me. So we're actually going to be starting a trial with menopausal women where they're going to be taking a supplement. We're going to be measuring biological age at the start, and we're going to be measuring biological age at the end, and obviously hoping to see that it is having some sort of impact on biological age. And hopefully this is why, we'd expect this is why they're having an improvement in their symptoms.
And will you be looking at postmenopausal women too, or peri?
Yeah, I would say that the criteria would be people that have definitely, gone through the menopause transition. So we know that they've, I wouldn't say completed menopause, because it is kind of difficult of where, it's a blurred line, but people that aren't perimenopausal, these would be women that are, actually have gone through the menopause technically. And are still suffering in some sort of way with fatigue, brain fog, and the other symptoms.
Super interesting. I want to have another interview with you after you get the results of that. How long do you think that study will take?
So we're looking at it's probably going to be a 6-month intervention. So they'll be taking the supplement for 6 months, just because when you're measuring biological age, the markers that you measure on the cell, they tend to have a lag. So say you do an intervention, you can't measure the effect straight away. It's like a couple of months later that the effect becomes visible on the cells. There's sort of a bit of a delay. So we need to do probably about a 6-month window for this one, to be able to actually track and monitor those changes to the cells that we measure when we're measuring biological age.
Okay, I got it. So, okay, maybe in 6 months, 1 year, we're coming back.
Yeah.
So I want to open up the panel. I know you guys have questions, and please open your mic and ask, or if you're too shy, you can type it in the chat. Anyone here would like to ask Nichola a question?
Hello, Nichola.
Hi.
I'm very happy to see you again. I have a question. Do you remember in 2019 when we met in Las Vegas at RATFest?
Yeah.
Actually, I did the test for NAD levels.
Yeah.
It was the company Longevity Bridge. I think Maria Intrigas and her husband, they were doing it. But then after, I think that Tom Ingolia, I think you know him as well.
Yeah.
Took over the results and everything. And this was meant to be like the first clinical trial in the world for NAD levels. I think that also Bill Falloon prepared this like kind of clinical trial for longevity for all the participants who wanted to be presented there. I think about 900 people for these tests. And Bill also include this NAD level test.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I know, because I paid for the kit and I was the part of the trial, I even sent you once my result,
Yeah.
but so far we haven't had the opportunity to discuss about it, because I didn't really get the results. It was just a little bit too complicated for my understandings, because there were so many different how to say,
Metabolites.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't really understand, because you said before that so far there is no NAD kit on the market yet, but I was the part of this clinical trial. So
so basically it's entirely possible to measure NAD. What I'm saying is that there's no commercially available kit, as in like you can't, like biological age testing or genetic testing, you can order a kit online, it comes in the post, you do a finger prick, a blood test, and then you send it back, and then they'll tell you what your results are. So that sort of testing isn't commercially available. I don't know what sort of testing that they were doing for that trial. If it was a case of being able to, take the blood samples, immediately store them and immediately process them and take them away, and then measure them in a robust way using the techniques which are required, then it's entirely possible that they did measure NAD levels, but I don't know how for that trial they did it. But yeah, we need to have a look at your results.
Yeah, because I bought actually the real kit. I mean, it was in the box, packed in the box, like we get the kit for measuring biological age. It was in a way the same. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking that it's already on the market, but I saw then this Longevity Bridge company, I don't know if they are still active. Something happened because Ingolia took over the results and so on. I would like just to tell that as far as I remember, and as far as some people explained my levels, I was at that time taking a pill maybe a year and a half or 2 years, and I did 250 milligrams of NR and NMN. I was taking both, and as far as I remember, and I sent you these results, my levels were really very, very high. And at that time I was 54, 55. That was 2 years ago. Okay, I'm fasting, I'm exercising, I'm taking bioidentical hormones. I am practically doing everything what we were talking about today. But I think that taking this 250 milligram pill was helping a lot to my good results, that my levels were very high, the way I understood my results.
Yeah, so there's no denying that taking NR or NMN does boost NAD. It's just not the most efficient way to do it. And the proof is in the fact that all of the studies that have been done, well, on NR because, and NMN because it's now something.
I know,
all only increase NAD by a very small amount in relation to how much it actually declines. And again, that's just because they're not addressing the root causes of NAD decline. So it would be super interesting to have seen your results if you'd actually been addressing the root causes. But I suppose in a way you probably were, by doing the fasting, by doing the exercising, because both of those things, they actually increase an enzyme called NAMPT, which is the one that actually, makes the NAD within the cell and recycles the NAD, and that's the one that declines with age. So in a roundabout way, without taking Nuchido, you've actually probably been boosting, and addressing those root causes of decline.
I was mentioning this no matter of the product. I just remember from the different speakers at the conference, if you remember, I think that Bill Falloon at that time mentioned that maybe the pill is not enough if we are more than 50 years old, but it can be very good if we try with intravenous getting the NAD. So I just wanted to say that I think that I was the perfect case to be shown that the pill can be enough. Is it Nuchido or is it NR or NMN? It doesn't matter. It's no need, I think, to get the IV, because IV is very expensive comparing to the supplement. This is why I wanted to mention this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the jury's still out as to how effective NAD IVs are. At the moment, the evidence shows that NAD, you know, is a large molecule. It definitely doesn't get through all of the cells in the body, which is where it needs to have its effect. It does get through some of them, which are more like neuronal cells. However, you've still got the same problem. So, you know, once the NAD goes into the cells, it's actually broken down by inflammatory proteins such as CD38. And if you're not actually addressing those underlying issues with, you know, the consumption of NAD that shouldn't be happening, and you're putting a huge amount of NAD in through an IV, it's kind of like you need to kind of get your house in order before you're going to invest in something, you know, as expensive as that. That would be my advice.
Okay, then thank you. My next question is, what will be the test kit you will be using at your clinical trial?
So the one we will use is glycanage. So this measures basically the pattern of glycans, which are like sugars that are stuck on the outside of your cells. And it's been shown that the pattern of glycans changes in a very predictable way as you get older. And this can basically be used as a measure of how good or bad your cells are aging. So it's glycanage. That's the one we've used in our clinical trial. And that is the one we will be using also in the menopause trial.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Because last time Zora had the interview with, what is her name? The scientist?
Nina.
Yeah, Nina, exactly. Then my last question would be, what do you think about the skincare with NAD? Because I'm using now Young Goose. Most probably you know the brand, and maybe they were also working with you together. I don't know. But I would like to hear your opinion. Is it true that this cream can help with the senescent cells of our skin? Thank you so much.
Well, I haven't seen any direct data. Again, as a scientist, I like to see the evidence. I like to see the clinical testing. I like to see the data.
They did clinical trials. I think they have them published on their website.
Yeah, so I think from what I know about the brand, and I don't work with them, I know that they use a patented, well, a branded NR substrate that's basically been made suitable to formulate into cosmetic skincare. And it's basically NR in a cream. So, you know, it's, you know, the NR you take orally, it's NR in a cream. Now, again, it's just back to the same old issue of it's a precursor. So first of all, there's the issue is, does it penetrate the skin? Again, it's not that I'm saying it doesn't, I just haven't looked into this. But first of all, it's got to penetrate the skin, and things generally are difficult to penetrate the skin. So NR has a difficult time.
That's why I'm asking you, because you are the expert. Yeah.
Yeah. So NR has quite a difficult time in itself, just getting into cells. So it's not something that can freely diffuse across a cell membrane. It's very well known that NR needs a transporter to go through. So, you know, the efficacy of putting it on your skin is entirely dependent on whether your skin has the available transporters to let it go inside the cells. And again, that's something I don't know the answer to. But also, if it does get in the cells, you're back to the same old problem of it's not fixing the underlying reasons of why NAD is declining. And if you really want to boost NAD and you really want to have an impact, that is what you need to be addressing.
Thank you.
It would be great if they just put Nuchido in the cream.
Well, watch this space.
Oh, yeah. Well, as a cosmetic scientist.
Yeah, because Dr. Conlon is not just a scientist for NAD, she's also a skincare expert. So this would be a perfect combination.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It will be most probably for the future.
Yeah.
Good idea.
I love it. I love this idea. Why not? Thank you so much, Magdalena. Does anybody else have any other questions before we let her go?
Oh, thank you. I wasn't sure how long the podcast was going to last. This is Marquita Williams. I wanted to ask you, well, I first wanted to say I really appreciate all the information you've shared today.
You're
It's been
welcome.
very enlightening, and I love the way that you presented it because it's very clear and down to earth and not so over my head. I couldn't understand it. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask you as far as your recommendation on fasting, because I've done fasting, I've done intermittent fasting. I'm kind of doing that now, but do you have a recommendation as to what is the best type to do? Or is there one?
Again, I think this is one of the things where the jury's still out. There's a lot of different, a lot of different people will say this type of fasting is better. It might be that you're doing a 16 8 fasting or 12 hours for women, different for men and women. As Zora highlighted earlier, a lot of the studies have been done on men. So do they even apply to women? We don't know. I think what is true is that doing some degree of fasting has some benefits. So doing anything is better than nothing right now. I think for a woman, it's recommended, a minimum of 12 hours break off eating can actually have impact. It's slightly longer for men. So I think at a very minimum, personally, what I do is I always make sure I have at least 12 hours between my evening meal and my breakfast. If I can go a bit longer, I do. But for me, I'm happy to do 12 hours and then every so often do a more prolonged fast to kind of cover all bases. So I think my advice would be that we know fasting does have benefits, but I think there's still a bit of uncertainty as to which type is best. And especially the sort of differences between the benefits for men and women is a really key area of research that's missing. But I think people are starting to do these studies. So hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to give a better answer to that.
Great. I'm so happy Marquita chimed in. She was in my physiology of aging class with me. So a lot of this stuff, I'm sure she's absorbed really, really well. So well done, Marquita. And so, yeah, and actually with the fasting thing too, I would recommend following Dr. Mindy Pelz, Pelz. She's a really great well, she creates programs, but she has her website, she has a podcast, but she dives really deep into fasting for women. And so she's really clear on that. I think she would be a great resource for you and try some of her techniques. And she's in her 50s. I think she's got through menopause, she gets it. She gets us. So go find Dr. Mindy Pelz, and I'll send that to you as well, or put that in the little email. Lucy, any questions before we go? No.
No, thanks, Zora. I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, if you have any questions later on, we are available. You can always find us. You can find Dr. Nichola Conlon on Instagram and Facebook, LinkedIn. She's in, as well as Nuchido. If you ever guys want to take a trial with that, we've got a discount code for you guys, Zora 10 off. For 10% off, and you just go to Nuchido. It's Nuchido. And if you do, you got to tell me how it goes, because I always want to hear what people's experiences are with Nuchido. So far, everything's been really great, but I do want to hear everything. So please go and find Dr. Nichola Conlon at Nuchido and ask me if you have any further questions. Dr. Conlon, do you have any last minute words you'd like to share before I let you go?
No, I think, my piece of advice is very similar to what you share, Zora, which is it's a whole approach. You've got to do a bit of everything. You can't just take a supplement and expect it to fix everything. It's your whole lifestyle. And this, taking an NAD supplement is part of that lifestyle towards healthy aging.
Well done. And I highly encourage people to sign up to your newsletter at nuchido.com. You give such great information, and it's not overwhelming. It's just in the perfect bite-sized format, and it's not too much. I'd really love that. And you explain the science so well so that we can all understand it. So I really appreciate you doing that. And I hope to have you on again after this menopause study.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully we'll have a couple of exciting studies to reveal. So yeah, definitely we'll book that one in.
Great. Well, everyone have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Zora.